A flag-draped transfer case comes off the ramp of a C-17 at Dover before dawn. It is the 24th of October, 2015. The Secretary of Defense stands at attention on the flight line, while a carry team walks the case past rows of saluting soldiers. The label reads, Master Sergeant Joshua Wheeler, United States Army. That is all it says, not the unit, not the one word every man on that tarmac already knew. The country will bury him with every honor it has, and it will never once say where he actually served. A Secretary of Defense does not fly to Dover for every fallen soldier. He was there because of who Wheeler was and what he had just done, and still the case in front of him carried only two words of identity, his name and his army. The dignified transfer is the most solemn thing the military does, a slow salute on a cold ramp that for years the cameras were not even permitted to record. Everything about the moment is built to honor the man completely, and still the written record of him stopped at his branch. Wheeler was the first American killed in action fighting the Islamic State. He died going through the door of a prison compound near Hawija, leading the way in to reach 70 hostages who were hours from a mass grave. More than 20 of the people pulled out alive that night were Iraqi soldiers, and the raid quietly marked American ground troops back in the fight after the country had been told the combat mission in Iraq was finished. The mission was supposed to be a Kurdish fight. American advisors were there to assist, not to breach. When the assault stalled and the Kurds took fire, Wheeler ran to the guns anyway and was hit inside the building. The Pentagon announced his death that same week. It gave his name, his age, 39, his hometown of Roland, Oklahoma, the date, the operation, and in time, a silver star to sit beside the 11 bronze stars he had already earned. The notice was complete in every way but one. Where it should have named his unit, it read, Headquarters, United States Army Special Operations Command, Fort Bragg, North Carolina. And that is a building, not a unit. Understand what that line is doing, because the whole story lives inside it. The Army admitted the death, it admitted the man, it admitted the valor, the mission, even the enemy he died fighting. The only thing it would not admit is the name carried by the men beside him, the name his own community says out loud, the name you already know, Delta Force. The 1st Special Forces Operational Detachment Delta, the unit. And this was not a tired officer making a bad call on a hard morning. It is the practice, every time, going back decades, and once you have seen the pattern you cannot stop seeing it. Start with what a casualty release actually is. When an American soldier is killed, the Department of Defense puts out a short public notice, a few sentences, so the loss is on the record and the family is named with dignity. That notice lists the command the soldier belonged to. For a paratrooper, it names the division. For a ranger, it names the 75th Ranger Regiment. The line exists so the country knows which part of its own army just lost someone. For a Delta operator, that line goes blank in a very specific way. It reaches up past the unit to the higher headquarters, United States Army Special Operations Command, the enormous command at Fort Bragg that sits several floors above Delta and owns tens of thousands of people. The statement is true. It is also a curtain. Telling you a fallen operator belonged to Army Special Operations Command is like telling you a man worked for the government. It is accurate, and it hides him completely. And it is worth being precise about how unusual this is, because the Army does not do it for everyone. When a soldier of the 82nd Airborne is killed, the notice says the 82nd Airborne. When a Ranger falls, it names the regiment by number. The country is normally proud to tell you exactly which of its formations paid the price, because the unit is part of the honor. Delta is the place where that pride goes quiet. It is the one corner of the Army where dying for the unit means the unit will not be printed anywhere near your name. To feel how deliberate that blank is, you have to know how these men live before they die. A Delta operator is scrubbed. He grows his hair out and loses the uniform's name tape and rank. On paper, he can be sheep dipped into a cover job, carried under some bland office nobody looks at twice. The unit itself has been referred to in public by throwaway cover names, Combat Applications Group among them, labels chosen precisely because they mean nothing to anyone who reads them. Charlie Beckwith built the force in 1977, and to this day the Army has never released a plain public fact sheet admitting Delta exists. So the empty line on the casualty release is not a fresh decision made in grief. It is the last page of a life spent invisible on purpose. The man was anonymous the entire time. The notice just keeps him that way. If you want the parts of these stories that live in the after-action record instead of the press release, The details the official notice is built to leave out. Subscribe and stay with us, because the pattern only gets heavier the closer you look. And it does not break, not even at the highest level the country has. Move forward 3 years, to the 30th of March, 2018. Master Sergeant Jonathan Dunbar, 36, out of Austin, Texas, is killed on a kill or capture mission against a senior Islamic State figure near Manbij, in northern Syria. Beside him, a British soldier is killed too, a man from Britain's own secret regiment, hidden by his government the same way Dunbar was hidden by his. The American release comes out. Assigned to Headquarters, United States Army Special Operations Command, Fort Bragg. The same line, word for word. Read Dunbar's earlier record in that same official biography, and it gets stranger, because it says that back in 2013, he was assigned to Headquarters, United States Special Operations Command, where he served, and here is the quoted phrase, as a team member, at a 4-star headquarters. That is not a job. That is a sentence engineered to be empty, and everyone who writes these knows it. There is a second silence around Dunbar worth naming. The Pentagon first reported he was killed when the Joint Force was struck by an improvised explosive device. Months later, the Special Operations Command corrected it. Dunbar and the British soldier had died in the accidental detonation of explosives the assault force itself was carrying, not from an enemy bomb. Notice the shape of that. When you make the man invisible, the facts around him blur too, and even the truth of how he died had to fight its way out later. Secrecy does not stay neatly around the unit. It bleeds into everything the public is told. Go back further, to the 17th of June, 2005, in Al-Qaim, on the Syrian edge of Iraq. 2 master sergeants, Robert Horrigan and Michael McNulty, stack on a compound before dawn and go through the door first. Both are killed in the ambush waiting inside. Over the net the call goes out, 2 eagles down, because that was the word for them, the word for the men of the unit. The Pentagon notice named them, honored them, and listed them both as assigned to United States Army Special Operations Command headquarters at Fort Bragg. Horrigan had given the better part of 20 years to Delta. At his funeral, his family, his city of Austin, and the special operations community that raised him all said the word plainly, out loud, into the air over the grave. The paper never did. 5 years on, the 4th of August, 2010, Kunduz province in northern Afghanistan. Master Sergeant Jared Van Alst is killed on his 6th combat deployment, a former ranger who had gone about as far into the army as a soldier can go before the country stops writing his story down. The release lists him, once again, at United States Army Special Operations Command, Fort Bragg. By now you can say the line before you read it. That is exactly the point. It is not weighed and written fresh each time by someone deciding what the public deserves to know. It is a template with a name dropped into the slot, and the slot where the unit belongs has been welded shut. And here is the part that should sit with you before we go on. These are the names we can prove, because a reporter, a medal, or a public raid forced the connection into the open. Wheeler and Dunbar reached the public because their missions made headlines. Gordon and Shughart reached it through the highest award the country gives. But an operator who dies on a mission that stays classified for 40 years, whose raid never draws a headline and never earns a citation read aloud, may never be tied to the unit at all. The pattern we can see is only the part that happened to surface. The true count of Delta's dead filed under a blank command is a number no civilian will ever hold. And here is where the silence stops being a quiet policy and becomes something much harder to look at. Because there is one document in the American military that is supposed to hold nothing back. The Medal of Honor citation, the nation's highest award for valor, read aloud in front of the president, entered into the record forever. The most sacred thing the country will ever write about one of its soldiers. On the 3rd of October 1993, in Mogadishu, 2 Delta snipers named Gary Gordon and Randall Shughart asked 3 separate times to be put on the ground to defend a downed pilot they almost certainly could not save. They went in knowing the arithmetic, 2 men against a gathering crowd, for a pilot they had never met, on the chance he was still alive. They held off that crowd until the ammunition ran out. Both were killed. Both received the Medal of Honor, the first the country had awarded since Vietnam. Now read the citations. Gordon is named as a sniper team leader, United States Army Special Operations Command, with Task Force Ranger. Shughart, sniper team member, United States Army Special Operations Command, with Task Force Ranger. The most honored words the nation will ever set down about these two men, and even there, even on the Medal of Honor, the country would not print the name of the unit they died for. Delta is nowhere in the citation. Sit with that for a moment. When the United States reached for the highest language it owns, it still reached right past the one true word. And for 30 years, every book and every retelling of that fight has had to add the word the citation left out, correcting the nation's highest honor with a footnote. Millions of people learned that Gordon and Shughart were Delta snipers from a movie, not from the medal. The country told the story of their valor and left the country's own record to be completed by Hollywood. If you are the kind of person who reads the citation instead of the caption, who wants the real unit standing behind the official line, then honestly, you are already one of us. That is what the cadet membership on this channel is for. 24-hour early access to every breakdown, your name marked in the comments, the occasional shout-out on camera. It is the front door to the unit. Step through it and stay close, because the reason for all of this is not the reason most people reach for first. So why do it? Why hold the line even on something as sacred as a Medal of Honor citation? The easy answer is a cover-up, and the easy answer is wrong. Nothing shameful is being buried here. The men are named. The deaths are public. The valor is carved into the record. What stays hidden is only the unit, and it stays hidden for a reason that begins the day an operator is selected. Delta runs the missions the country never announces, against enemies who study every scrap the Pentagon releases. A confirmed roster, a confirmed assignment, a confirmed pattern of who deploys and who falls and when is intelligence in the wrong hands. So the affiliation is protected while he serves, and nobody lifts that protection once he is gone. The same curtain that kept a man anonymous through 20 years of the hardest work in the force stays drawn across his casualty notice, his award, and the official memory of him. Operational security does not care that the operation is over. It follows him all the way home. And there is a real cost to that, one this audience feels even while it accepts the reason. A young soldier who wants to understand the unit cannot read an honest official history of its dead, because the honest history is scattered across obituaries and foundation pages instead of the record that should hold it. The country's own account of its most decorated modern warriors has a hole in the middle of it, shaped exactly like the truth. A recruit can find the medal but not the unit, the funeral but not the record, so the real story gets passed hand to hand in the community instead of written down where the nation keeps its honors. We guard the secret, and the price is paid by the men who guarded it best, left nearly unknown to the country they protected. Which leaves something strange and heavy for the people left behind, because somebody does still say the word. It is never the government. It is the mother who writes it into the obituary the state would not. It is the foundation set up in a fallen operator's name that finally prints the unit in plain letters, the way the tributes for Jared Van Alst and Bob Horrigan say it without flinching. It is the men who were in the stack beside him, who called 2 eagles down over a radio and meant something the official record will confirm for no one. The fullest public account of where these men actually served does not come from the country they served. It comes from the family at the graveside and the teammates at the memorial wall. The state hands over the flag, the honors, and the blank space. The people who love them are left to fill it in. So go back to the question in the title and answer it straight, the way this audience demands. Does the Army refuse to admit when a Delta operator dies? Not the death. The Army admits the death, folds the flag, sends the case home, stands a Secretary of Defense at attention on the flight line at Dover, lays the man in the ground at Arlington with every honor on the books. What it will not admit, from the casualty release to the Medal of Honor citation, is the name of the unit that made him what he was. Joshua Wheeler, United States Army Special Operations Command. Jonathan Dunbar, United States Army Special Operations Command. Gordon and Shughart, Horrigan and McNulty. Van Alst, the same command, the same blank, across 25 years and 4 different wars. Every one of them a quiet professional in the most literal sense the phrase allows, kept quiet even after the guns went silent. So here is the question worth arguing in the comments, and there is no clean answer to it. When a nation asks a man to disappear into its most secret unit, and he gives his life doing exactly that, does it owe him the truth of his own name on the record that carries him home, or is the silence the last discipline of the work, the final thing the job asks of him after everything else? Tell us where you land, because this audience understands the weight on both sides better than anyone watching. And if you want the versions of these stories that never survive the official summary, the units standing behind the commands, the operations standing behind the citations, the parts that stay behind the fence, that is what the full membership on this channel opens up, sine pari, without equal. And for these men, without a name on the paper that carried them home,